Hello and welcome back to Craftube. I'm Ros Clark. This is Ros Clark Craft, my home on the internet, and this is my real home in real life. It's lovely to have you back and to have a chance to catch up with you. I hope you've been enjoying the slightly different kind of videos I've had in the last couple of weeks. So last week, if you've not already seen it, I posted a video introducing some of the samplers that I own. So antique samplers. I didn't manage to find for that video the sampler which I've done. I'm still looking for that and I will show it to you one day. And then the week before I posted a transformation challenge. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while, based on the Great British Sewing Bee, their transformation challenge round. I did a transformation based on a couple of men's shirts. I really like what I came out with. I've worn it several times and I will show that to you, but it won't be in this video. What I'm going to try, after my last actual Craftube video, I asked you to let me know if you enjoyed the really long videos or if you'd find it easier if they were a bit shorter. And there was a general feeling that people did find them a bit long, which is fair enough. I always think I won't have enough to talk about, and then it turns out I have loads to talk about. So what I'm going to try today, I'm going to film the same video that I normally would, but I'm going to split it up into two parts. So this first part of the video is going to be all about yarn and yarny things, knitting and spinning and crochet. And then I'm going to carry on, but I will edit it as a separate video about sewing and stitching and those kind of things. I don't think I've got any art to show you this time, so I'm not going to try and work out where that would go. In future videos, maybe that'll tag on at the end of one of them, or maybe it'll have its own separate thing. So let me know if you like that, if you like the idea of things that are more specialist, a bit shorter, or if you like seeing everything all mixed up together like in the previous videos. So I'm going to start. I don't really have crochet and knitting generally up on the wall, and so this is not off the wall, this is out of my sock drawer, but I've been meaning to show you these for ages. So these have been worn quite a lot. These are socks that I made about 18 months ago. There are two of them. They are identical. They're supposed to be identical, and I think they might actually be identical. And I made these about 18 months ago and submitted them as a design for the sock knitting competition that I do regularly. It's called Sock Madness. It always runs in the spring, usually from about March through to June. And this year my design was selected not as a competition sock, but a pre-competition sock. And it was brilliant, actually. The moderators in the Ravelry group set it up as a kind of treasure hunt. So each part of the pattern had its own separate clue, and different clues were located all over the place in the rules or in the, you know, useful recipes for during Sock Madness threads, or all over the place in the group. So it's a really great way of encouraging people to actually look and see all the information that's there. When people started, they had no idea what they were going to be making. I mean, I think they knew it would be socks, but there were no pictures showing, so they would do the cuff, and then they got the bit showing them that they had to do these bobbles, and then there's a lacy section on the legs, and then this sort of two colour, this is a stitch called Eye of Partridge, which is a slip stitch that gives you a bit more robustness to the fabric in the heel. And then on the foot there's a cable pattern, so you can see why this pattern, I had not designed it with this intent, but actually it worked really well for that sort of treasure hunt, because you really couldn't tell what was coming next. And then finally a little bit of stranded colour work around the toe. And the pattern is called 15s. That's partly because it was the 15th Sock Madness that I designed them for, but also it's got 15 of everything. So there are 15 bobbles. The lace repeats, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it actually has a knit and purl pattern in the middle of the lace repeat that reads 15, and there are 15 of those repeats. So there's 4 rounds of it with 4 in each round, but you miss one out centered over the heel. There are 15 repeats in the heel, there are 15 cables, and there are 15 dots around the toe. And if you've ever eaten 15s, you'll know where I got the idea from. 15s are a kind of, I want to say tray bake, but they're not baked, like a refrigerator cake. And you make them with 15 digestive biscuits and 15 marshmallows and 15 glacé cherries, and I can't remember what else goes in there. But you mix it all together and then you end up with these delicious things. So those are my 15s. I will put a link in the description box to a recipe for 15s, but also I will put a link if you're interested. The pattern for these socks is now available. It's available to download from my website, and it's also available on Ravelry. And I do have, not loads, but I don't know, 4 or 5 knitting patterns available on Ravelry, several pairs of socks. There's a tea cozy in the, excuse me, tea cozy that looks a bit like a cricket sweater. I can't remember if there's something else, but anyway, I will put a link, and if you're on Ravelry, you can go and have a look at those. If you're not on Ravelry, or if you find Ravelry hard to use these days because of the accessibility issues, like I say, you can find this pattern on my website, but also most of the other patterns that I have available are available through P-Hop. P-Hop, P/HOP, I'll put a link. It's a fundraiser, knitting fundraiser for Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders. And they use a number of ways of raising money, but one is by having patterns available, knitting patterns, a few crochet patterns available. You can download them and you make a donation, pennies per hour of pleasure. So however much you think you might enjoy knitting the thing, you make a donation for that amount. The 15s are not a P-Hop pattern, they are just available for free, but I do have a couple of other patterns that you can download there. So I'll put links below, and I'd love you to go and check those out if you'd like. So I've not been knitting those recently, but they were something I've been meaning to talk about. Mostly what I have been working on is my crochet blanket. Now I've talked to you, I think, about this before, and I think possibly last time, can't quite remember, I might have had a whole lot of these little circles in progress. Where we are at now is I have got 81 circles, which is, we're going to have 81 squares altogether, 9 by 9 in the blanket, 81 that have got to at least this stage. So they're all different colours in the middle, and then they've all got this same royal blue around the middle circle. I've got 81 all done that far. Then I've got about 34, 35 where I've made that circle into a square. So I've done 2 rounds, changing it from a circle into a square, let's put it that way. So that's actually the front. And then all of those, sort of the third rounds, are all going to be in bright colours. So I've done all the oranges and all the yellows. I've got, oh no, that's different. So I haven't got that one. I've started doing, but I can't now put my hand on, a few of them in this pink colour. There's also going to be some in the bright red colour. There's also going to be some, what have we got? Red, orange, yellow, that sort of purpley pink. Oh, the green. I'm going to do some in the green around that edge. And then there's one, because I'd done this one as my sample square before I decided that, which has got the grey. It's fine. And then, so I've got about, yeah, just over half of them to do that third round in. And then I'm going to do the 4th rounds in the sort of greens and blues and greys, I think. So I'm hoping that will end up with a really nice, bright, cheerful colourway. I'll put some photos in. I took a photo after I'd finished all of the second rounds, and a couple of photos that I've got that show you how it's starting to look with some of the third rounds in there. But then there will be also the 4th rounds that I haven't started. And then I'll have to sew it up, and then there'll be a border and all of that. So it's not going to be finished tomorrow, but it's making really good progress. I'm pleased with how quickly it's coming along and how much I'm getting through that and still enjoying it, which is good. I think it's definitely working well to do it in those sections, all the centres first, and then the next round, and then the square, and then the final border round. Now, the next thing I've got to show you that I've been working on is the various bits of yarn that I've been spinning. So the big news on the spinning is that I have sold my previous spinning wheel. So I bought Joy a couple of weeks ago, and I managed to sell my old wheel last weekend. So I now have gone back down to a 1 spinning wheel household, which I think is reasonable. Yeah, particularly given the size of my house, that is quite reasonable. So I just wanted to show you the various bits of yarn that I've taken off and plied and made into the next stage. So this was the yarn that I'd done as my sort of test on my new wheel. This is a 2-ply. And what I've done with this, what I've done with all of these that I'm about to show you, is I washed them. So you just soak it very gently in hand hot water. You don't want anything too hot. You know what wool goes like if you put it in a hot cycle in the washing machine, it felts up and it gets small and tight. You don't want to do that. So just hand hot water with a little bit of natural soap, soaked in there for, I don't know, half an hour or so, and then just squeeze it out. You don't want to wring it. You don't want to put any pressure on it at that point, but just squeeze it out and then hang it up. So I have just an ordinary coat hanger, and I've been hanging yarn across that and hanging it up in my bathroom to dry. So that's completely dry. That is now ready. Whenever I want to knit it, I will wind it up into a ball and knit from that. But for the moment, it can just stay in that skein. And similarly, this is the yarn that I made in Scotland. So you can see this is still quite a lot rougher and tougher. I think that's partly to do with the fibre that I used and partly my relearning of the spinning process. And that's been through the same process. You can still feel a little bit of the lanolin in it. It's a little bit got that sort of proper woolen feel, but it's not quite as greasy as it was before. And I'm thinking what I might do is something with those two together in a kind of colour work. I'll need to be careful, I think, because the undyed fleece, they're both undyed, this sort of creamy coloured fleece, creamy coloured yarn is quite a lot finer than the dark yarn. So I might need to hold it double, or yeah, think about how I could use those together. But I think they would look really pretty together in that sort of very natural colourway. And then probably that will be a gift for somebody else, because it's not really my colourway. But it's lovely. So what I have then done, because I needed to finish this before I sold the other wheel, this was what I had been spinning up on that wheel, and it is enormous. I've ended up with sort of 2 quite enormous skeins of this. Let me hold it nice and close. You can see it's got that real barber pole twisting effect, which I love. So it's just a 2-ply yarn that I've spun. I should have been building up a stash of fibre that I just wasn't using. And so what I did a couple of years ago, I took it all out and separated into different colourways. And so this was all the blues, greens, yellows. It's got a little bit of brown and cream in there, but everything in that sort of colour family. And then I just carded it and took it in sections, halved it, spun each half onto 1 bobbin, and then plied the 2 bobbins together to see how they came out. And I really like it. It's got that properly hand spun, slightly thick and thin, lovely barber poling effect. And what I'm going to do with this, I need to measure how much I've got. And in fact, what I think I'll do is insert a little bit of video here where I show you how I go from this to a knittable, usable ball of yarn, and in the process measure it. So I'm going to weigh it, but I'm also going to measure the yardage on this. So I will show you how you do that. Okay, so you will have seen me wind this up, measure it. You will know how much yarn I've got. I still don't know. But I've got 2 little bits of it here and here. And my plan for this was that it's going to be a lane splitter skirt. I'll put a picture up here of that. This is a free knitting pattern from knitty.com. It is super, super easy. All you are doing is knitting. It's not quite garter stitch. It's, I think, what is it? 3 rows of knit, 1 purl row, something like that. So it's got a slight ridge to it, but super easy. And you just increase, and then you kind of keep going. So you're forming a rectangle of knitted on the bias, on the diagonal. And what that does is it means the skirt is much less likely to sort of stretch out of shape and bag out around your bottom and so on. The diagonal is just a bit of a stronger line on your knitting. So you just knit that diagonal in the stripes with the ridge, and then put some elastic around the waistband. And if you want, I think, so I've made one of these before several years ago, and I really, really loved it. Honestly, it's just like wearing a blanket. It's the most comfortable garment I've ever owned. So warm and so easy to wear, and looks really quite smart. I mean, it did. I wore that and wore that and wore that and wore it to death, really. It didn't look that smart at the end, but you know, it's fine. So I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make it, I think, slightly shorter. So it's, the previous one was just sort of on or below my knee, and I prefer my skirts just above the knee. So I'm going to make it slightly shorter. And with that first one, I also lined it just with some lightweight jersey fabric, just because the hand spun is, where it's thin, so it is a little bit thick and thin, and where it's thin, you can end up with some quite large holes in your fabric, and I just felt more comfortable if I had a lining. I mean, I would only ever wear it with tights or leggings anyway, so it wasn't a huge deal, and you certainly don't have to do that if you don't want to. Now, because the pattern is designed for you to knit with 2 yarns or 2 colorways in alternating stripes, what I want to see is if I've got enough that I think I could maybe do the whole skirt in this. I think I've got a little bit of leftover hand spun in a sort of bright yellowy green that I could include, and I want to see whether I can just do it knitting this against itself, because there's enough variation in this that you would see that. If not, and I haven't checked how much I need, I am about to start spinning the other colorways. So I've got the bag here, and you can see these are all the sort of reds and purples and oranges and pinks. So that would be the contrasting colorway, and I think that was what I originally planned, but I don't necessarily need to do that if I've already got enough yarn with what I've got made up already. So we'll see. It's not going to be my next project anyway. Well, it might be my next project, but if it's at best it's going to be a post blanket project. I do want to get the blanket done before I start anything else large, so I might start spinning that if I'm going to need it, and if I'm not, then I think we'll just set all of that aside till I'm ready to start knitting it. It won't be a long, difficult knit once I get ready, and because it's so warm, I won't want to wear it until it's really cold. Maybe December, sort of January, February time is the most likely time I'll want to wear that anyway, so there's no hurry. But I'm glad to have finished the spinning on that before I sold the yarn, and it is lovely. I do really like it. So that's that. Those are the only things I think that I have been working on, but I've got 1 or 2 other things to show you, maybe just one other thing to show you at this point. Last weekend I was in London for a friend's birthday, and I just happened to visit a very nice yarn and fabric store in Muswell Hills called Slip Stitch. I didn't buy any yarn there. You should be very proud of me. I did buy some fabric. I'll show you that in a minute. But I also bought this. This is Pompom magazine. You may have come across this. It is a knitting magazine. What did it say? Knitting, crochet, crafts, fashion, art, food, Pompom Quarterly. I mean, it's like 90% knitting. There is a little bit of crochet, there are little bits of other things, but it is basically a knitting magazine. And in this magazine you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 patterns. I think that's right. Let me just check whether that's a pattern as well. Yeah, 9 knitting patterns. I think they're all knitting patterns. I don't think there were any crochet patterns in here. That's definitely knitting. Yeah. Yeah. And of those 9, oh no, that's a crochet pattern. Okay, 1 crochet pattern, 8 knitting patterns. So the thing that sold it to me was actually this thing that's on the back. I'm going to show you a better picture of that in just a second. This is called the Lisa coat, Lisse, and that is what it looks like. So it is a really comfy, casual, cozy sort of coat. It's not smart, it's not fitted, it comes with a hood. I just think it looks so fun to wear, and it will be really fun to knit. So it's knitted with double knitting. Double knitting is a technique where you can knit sort of like a lining almost. You have a front face of your fabric and a back face of your fabric, and you knit them at the same time so that they are joined together as if they are one fabric. And in this garment, I'm going to show you, I don't know if you can see, inside the hood, that's where you can see the inside of the double knitted fabric, and you would have that around the whole coat. That's not just in the hood. They've used a white boucle knit, boucle sort of a bobbly kind of yarn, and it almost gives like a fleecy feel, I think, to what that lining looks like. You wouldn't have to do that. You could do double knitting in like just a plain cotton or some other yarn that you wanted to use. You don't have to do it at all. You could just knit the whole thing, I think, in ordinary single knitting, and then maybe you might choose to line it with a woven fabric to stop it again pulling out of shape, or you might think it didn't need lining at all. So we'll see. You don't have to do the hood. There is a collar version as well, but I just really like that, and I like the idea of doing lots and lots of different you knit all of these squares in a modular kind of fashion with different colours of stripes, and I like that. In the sample version, pink is clearly the neutral colour. You don't have to do yours in pink, but I might. So I really like that, and I do want to do that. It will not be finished for this winter, but it's a project that I think I like to do. There are 1 or 2 others. I also really like this cardigan. This is called Crux, and it's quite a simple cardigan. It's knitted just in a very plain sort of way, but then it's got a very pale variegated yarn sort of caught into it horizontally and vertically to give a cross effect. You could certainly stitch that in afterwards, but I think it's not that hard to do it as you knit as you go, and then it's integrated into the fabric. That was a really interesting idea and a really lovely effect that you get on the fabric of that. So that was very pretty. Might try that. A huge sort of blanket throw thing that I really like, but I'm never going to knit. Yeah, and one or 2 other things that maybe there's a shawl that's quite nice to knit. So anyway, then you get the pattern instructions, and then at the end, what I thought was really sweet, because it's a quilt themed issue, so all of the knitting projects, crochet projects are inspired by quilts. There's a pattern for a recipe for a Battenberg cake, because obviously that's quilt inspired. So it's Pompom magazine. I'm not sure if I've ever bought Pompom before. I've certainly seen it around and seen mentions of it. I thought it was really nice. It's not cheap, it's £12.50, but you know, £12.50 for 9 knitting patterns is actually not a bad deal. And you know, there's a relatively high hit rate in there of things I like and might want to make. So I think that's all I have to share with you on the knitting, crochet, spinning, yarny thing. You will have seen, hopefully, inserted the video with the winding and measuring of my hand spun yarn. And I will be back. I'm not sure when there will next be one with knitting and crocheting in it. Your guess is as good as mine, but I hope you've enjoyed watching. Do let me know in the comments if you think this works better. Don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. All of those things just help YouTube to know that people like what I'm doing and are interested in it, and therefore they might suggest it to other people as well. Great, take care, and I will see you next time.